So we usually open this up with examples. So we'll start with some bad examples, the most egregious uses of exposition you've seen. It can be from a film, a book, even an article or anything like that. So I just want to open up the floor. Has anyone got any bad examples off the top of your head?
Who wants to take that?
Well, I can tell you, I don't have any off the top of my head, at least. But I have been accused of doing that from time to time. One of my mentors early on was an author named Patricia Anthony. If you guys are not familiar with Patricia's work, she was brilliant. And one of her biggest sellers was a book called Flanders, which was a remarkable book, World War I, the story of an American Texan named Travis Lee Stanhope, who came from a terribly abusive family relationship and joined the British infantry in World War I to get away from an abusive father. And the book is told in a series of letters from Travis Lee to his little brother Bobby back home. It's a remarkable story. It actually did quite well in France because it was a whole new view on what it was like fighting in the trenches of World War I. And Patricia, I actually took a night school class that she was the faculty instructor. And she very quickly beat me up on two things that you've already said, Carmine. One was show, don't tell. And the other was don't let exposition get in the way of action. She was always about advancing. And that was candidly, that was the reason that I suggested Michael's story, that first chapter wasn't necessary, because it felt like he needed to know that as the author to write this character, but I didn't need to know what he was doing before the action started. And that's what that chapter felt like. It felt like a setup. And so I suggested, and this was Patricia's sort of advice to me, get to the action and don't let things slow down the action that's happening, because we as a reader, we like to keep the things moving. We don't want it to stall. And what you just suggested on kind of the data dump is fine in textbooks, but not in entertainment.
No, that's fair to
I
say.
love that answer.
Yeah.
Because that's the only way I write now, is through you're in the lens of the character and you're learning with that character. Right now, that's the season that I'm in because I'm still developing my voice, right? But I think that's where you start. My example would be good and bad, by the way. Let me throw that out there, is Star Wars.
I was going to say.
You get the full page right there in the beginning, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why not start fresh, like we said? And you have to figure out who these people are in the strife that is happening across the galaxy, what have you. Because
so
that would take too long.
Observation. Yeah.
Who can read that fast? Controversial opinion about Star Wars intros. Who's reading it fast enough to see it? They're literally like, oh yeah, you got all that.
I read fast.
Star Wars gets a lot.
I read subtitles though. I'm an anime guy.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
There you go.
It's a skill at this point.
I read subtitles, but not that fast.
Star Wars gets a lot of hate on this show, unfortunately. But it's a...
I didn't say that. I respect Star Wars and I respect George Lucas.
It's something that we can all relate to because everybody's seen. We know exactly what you're talking about. I feel much the same way about, in many cases, about a prologue. If a prologue is needed, then make it chapter 1. If the prologue is not needed, then don't put it in, and just drop me into the action of the scene, of the characters, what's happening. And I don't mind the exploring, Michael, to your point, of having to figure out exactly what's going on. I think that's part of the fun, at least when you first open a book, to go, holy smoke, where am I? You know, what have I been dropped into? What have I stumbled into? And I like, in my stories at least, I like throwing really big curveballs in very first chapters when you first meet characters, so that they're memorable and that they don't just kind of slide onto the page. They make a bold step onto stage. And so, yeah, comment on Star Wars, but I like the series. But I agree with you too, Abby. For me, the words went by a little too quick, and there were words that I didn't know what they meant, and so it made me feel like, okay, I don't really know what's going on here. And then the big ships showed up, and everything got great. But yeah, I hear you.
Has anyone seen Ready Player One or read Ready Player One?
No.
Watch the film.
Yeah, I've seen the film, not recently.
That would be another example that I have. I, by the way, love the book. Love the movie. They are not the same.
Okay.
Simple statement. And while I have an issue with that generally, the movie I thought was done so well, I don't care because I have the book.
Yeah.
So I want to make that statement known. But, and I'll quickly just explain what that is. So Ready Player One, that's a 2011 science fiction novel, and I was the author is Ernest Cline, one of my favorite books. And I say that because it's a coming of age story of a young male, and it's in the year 2045. He's poor and he wants to be rich. And the way you can get rich is by gaming in this virtual reality world. And everyone does it because that's how people make money now. That's where people go to work. That's where people go to meet other people. That's where people go to have sex, They do it in a virtual world. And that's what this author has anticipated for our future. And so that being said, this kid's like, hey, the only way I can possibly make enough money to do what I think I need to do is if I win this amazing tournament. It's not a tournament. It's like a quest that the inventor of the world created. And that's what keeps people coming back to the thought that they could find these Easter eggs. And so they have to pass these trials to get to the big win, which is, I don't think they know what the true win is, but it's a lot of money too, right?
Yeah.
So that being said, that's the explanation. Please read the book and then rewatch the film if you choose to. But that being said, there's so much exposition dumped to explain all of that background of who created the game, why he created the game, and in the East. And so, anyways, that's my statement.
I'm gonna. Do you want to go? I've got another one that's quite bad.
Can I just comment on that? Yeah, because I'd like to hear. But do you mind if I comment on what Michael just said?
That's fine.
Briefly, I think what you've described, Michael, is a challenge that a lot of writers have when they don't trust their readers, and that is, again, this is something Patricia Anthony really impressed upon me when it comes to writing. Writing it's consumed by the reader's imagination. Movies are consumed by the reader's eyes and brain. And so a movie maker has got to fill in all the cracks for the movie watcher because it's happening outside of the watcher's imagination, whereas a writer can use a reader's imagination to their advantage. And what I've learned is that the exposition that is outside of action or outside of dialogue is best painted with a very light brush. Just give the reader enough to let their imagination decide what this thing looks like, unless it's really important that it looks like something very specific. But if it's a building or a streetscape or a park or a ship or whatever, they don't need to know every rivet on the ship. They just need to know the very basic things about it. And Michael, you may remember in your book too, when I was reading it, I don't remember which chapter it was, but some of the exposition that was on board the ship, there was a lot of detailed descriptions that, okay, I got it. Let's go move on. What's going to happen next? Because I'm kind of with you in this place where you are, and let my imagination will fill in. If the story's compelling, the reader's imagination will fill in for those paragraphs or pages of exposition that don't really advance the characters forward. In my world, the kind of writing that I do, it's all about advancing the characters' motivations and what they're doing, and just paint enough of the picture to make the setting realistic and believable and move on.
And Carmine, I'll get right back to you. With my background in design also, Randy, I get to world build and use, this vernacular that I've had to, that's been instilled in me since 2004 when I took drafting my freshman year. So, that's what I love. And then you taught me, but people don't use these words really. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. And and then that taught me how to break that down as to, no, I have to describe what that material is, like the porousness in the rock and the minerals, things like that. Like, and I don't go into that much detail, but my point is you made me think differently. So thank you again.
You're fine. Yeah, great. I'm glad to hear it.
And
okay, Carmine, I interrupted you, but forgive me for that.
No, it's fine. It's fine. You can express yourself here. It's informal.
Used to that on this show with me, especially.
But the example I wanted to bring up that I'm surprised no one mentioned was The Matrix, the second film, where the architect's speech, where the entire film comes to a complete stop. And that scene is about 10 minutes long. And it's a really high-level philosophical description of the entire plot. But they're not trying to hide it.
Now that you mention it.
Yeah, do you remember that?
Now that you bring that up, I do remember hating that part.
Do you remember that?
Thank you for reminding me I hated that.
Right, yeah. The Matrix comes up a lot on the show, but that film in particular...
in a good way.
Yeah, this is the first time we've actually said anything negative about it, but that as
not
well...
Not the first one, you noticed that. It's the second one.
Yeah, it's the second one, and again, as Emma and Remy just pointed out, it stuck in your mind that you didn't like what you saw, you were being told, and it goes back to what you were saying earlier, Randall, with being able to trust the audience and trust the reader. They didn't trust anyone. They gave you the story. It was like a wall of text if it was written down, with really detailed and complex ideas that didn't really need to be in there. And again, it's 10 minutes out of the film, so you've got a runtime, and that's like a pretty significant percentage of it. So that's probably the worst one I can think of myself. So now,
well, you made me think of a movie that came out recently called 9 Days. I don't know if you guys heard of that one. That one's
is it on Netflix.
That one came out. I think it is on Netflix, maybe. It shows here it is on Hulu, at least. But 9 Days, that's came out in 2021. It's a fantasy sci-fi, and it's got Zazie Beetz, Winston Duke. And if you don't know who those characters are, Winston Duke played in Black Panther. He is Chimbaku.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Big guy in the mountains.
Yeah.
Zazie Beetz, she was in The Harder They Fall as the love interest for Jonathan Majors. Bill Skarsgård, that's the youngest Skarsgård. And then Benedict Wong, from Marvel's. He is the Asian character in most of the Marvel movies, I'll put it that way. But anyways, I won't even explain really what it's about, but it's like, before birth, there's humans that face 9 day trials in an upside down world. So very fantasy, right? But it's all exposition. Like, you just have to listen to people talk. It's dialogue. And don't get me wrong, watch it the one time and you're like, okay, wow. Makes you rethink about life. But anyways, I just wanted to throw that out there again.
Well, the description you gave there, like the single sentence, that would have been enough to at least create the curiosity gap and wanting to know more. So that would have been enough if they would have just done that single sentence you said, because I'm like, all right, I might check this out now, just based on that. So that's another demonstration. It wasn't necessary to put all of that up front and kind of burden the audience. Okay, so let's move on to good examples. Do you have any good examples where you almost didn't even notice it was exposition that you were watching, reading, experiencing?
Sorry, I do have a thought, but I talk too much.
No, it's fine. If you've got an example, jump in.
Well, we recently spoke about training montages.
Yeah.
And I think a montage is exactly that, right? And I think that's, if it's done well, obviously, execution is everything. But I think that's the best way because what Randall said, visual, right?
Yeah.
And then you get to see a lot of things happen all at once. And sometimes there's not even any words at all. You just saw it.
Yeah.
So maybe that's just a video effort. I don't know if that can be written, but I think there are, and maybe you can help me out with this. Are there montages in writing, and is that the same thing as exposition?
That's a
question.
It's a good question, because the formula would definitely be different, because you're describing things and it'd have to kind of move in sequence and still make sense to the reader. So I'm not sure I've seen that in books as much, or even I can't think of any off the top of my head that added like a detailed montage, especially a training montage.
Well, I think Lord of the Rings. I think Tolkien. That's
dense.
Hobbit or The Hobbit. It's super dense, but I mean, think about it. There's a lot of explaining in there. I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
Am I wrong? Okay.
No.
Not
Even
seen
in
it.
film,
Controversial.
the film was
Controversial. I don't want to go there.
My example would probably be Mr. DNA from Jurassic Park and the Jurassic World films. They quickly summarize how they messed with DNA to get the results of why they're there, literally through a kid's YouTube tutorial.
That's so
like
good.
the perfect way to do it.
Yeah, that's good.
And it was so easy. We loved it. I was like, so that's how they did it.
It's literally iconic. He's an iconic character, and he's literally just an info dumper, and nobody thinks about it. Love him.
Jeff Goldblum, he questioned it immediately. He said, "Well, no, that didn't answer anything. What is this?"
So it's like it's a self-aware kind of thing, isn't it? When Jeff Goldblum's in there, you know he's gonna have that comedic edge or break the fourth wall or something like that. But that's a good way to hide it for sure. I've not seen that one in a tutorial video. I suppose now, because we're in modern times, a lot of people get their information that way.
That tells me you don't have small children in your house. Basically, everything for them is that
YouTube.
And I watch a lot of that. So
yeah, it's fair to say hide it in a YouTube tutorial. It's as long as it's intentional. You don't feel like
simplified.
You're watching exposition happen. Like I think, yeah, that's a really good example. The one I was gonna give is from The Social Network. You know, Zuckerberg's origin story of sorts, where you find a lot out about the characters during an argument and their disagreements on how certain events went. So, as the audience, you're putting that together yourself, kind of like, oh, well, who's telling the truth? And then it shows you their insecurities, and built in as well, it shows you more about the characters and their position. So I like that as well. They do the same thing in Game of Thrones with Baratheon and Ned Stark. They're talking about a war that happened previously, but they have different recollections of how it went. So then they're giving you the exposition, but then you're kind of like doubting who's telling the truth about the events. One of them's talking about the glory of war and the other one's talking about the trauma. So it's like, that's an interesting way it could be set up as well. I quite like that. Like during a conversation.
Has anyone seen The Hateful Eight?
Yeah. I love that film.
I mean, I think, so I literally just watched that last night.
Oh, okay.
And there's so much backstory for every single character that were intentionally put together in this location. And you start to, as you hear more about each character's backstory, you start, initial allies start to look at them differently because you know what, their true emotions coming out. I'm like, I actually don't really rock with that guy. We just kind of stumbled upon each other, and at least I knew him, and the devil I know is better than the devil I don't. And so that's the theme of this whole movie, and you don't know who to trust. And this is in a time in a Western where you shouldn't trust anyone. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So
it's such a good movie that even when there's not a lot happening, you don't mind. You're just watching and just waiting. Like there's a few things in there. I'm not going to give too much away about it. Great film, but Tarantino, he's almost got that formula where there's a lot of subversion in there. He's hiding details in the characters themselves, so it's not like someone's going to stand in front of the screen and like almost read the plot to you and then digest all that, and then now we move. It's a lot hidden. It's a lot of nuance in there. I like Tarantino's formula for exposition.
Unnecessary use of the N-word.
I
think it reached the pinnacle of quantities.
I don't know what his thing is, but all of his films, it's
we
always,
all know what his thing is.
it's always going to be in there.
Exactly. So we all know what his thing is.
But Samuel Jackson, he's on board with it every time.
We all know what his thing is too. I collect his bag because nobody else is. Who would? Except Jamie Foxx
Yeah, and again,
and Kerry Washington.
That goes into a whole different thing. The Hateful Eight, like it starts as something that, but again, that's just part of his formula at this point. And I know you've got your thing with Tarantino.
Hey, I think he's great at what he does. Yeah. But how do people hide who they are? They don't.
Well, in exposition. But, yeah, I agree. In terms of that film, like N-word aside, it's a great film. You got to admit
yeah,
that.
Absolutely.
You'd watch that again. I
literally watched it last night.
And that literally covers what we were saying, because I suppose he did the same thing with Reservoir Dogs as well, where it starts, because we spoke about this on another topic with the briefcase, and you don't know what's in the briefcase, and it wasn't really relevant to the story. It was just a prop. But yeah, he's got his way of doing that. Any more obvious good ones that we might have missed?
Guy Ritchie. I mean, again, it's in visual form, but his montages are very much exposition dumps that's so necessary. And then how he summarizes it at the end. What do you think that is?
Yeah.
And it's so what do you call it? Nourishing. It's so satisfying when you get to piece it all together and you were watching it the whole damn time.
And it's nonstop action, and pretty much.
Nonstop action. But subtle action too. It's not blow everything up, it's sleight of hand action.
Yeah.
And people love that.
So I think it goes back to what you were saying earlier, Randall, with the don't feel like you need to spoon feed the audience. Like, you can trust them to piece it together if you give them enough. But that is the balance that the writer has to find, knowing where to cut that off. Because, again, I know you went through this as well with OOTP, knowing when to cut the information, thinking, okay, that's enough. We'll get back to that later on. Like, you've got to catch up. So you've almost got to figure it out and move with us. Don't get left behind. That kind of feeling.
Well, Randy also told me word count matters, and so that also helps. And now you're just like, all right, I gotta cut this back. I gotta cut it off, cut it back, do something. I was like, this doesn't make sense, or that's overkill, or that's redundant.
I'll read anything you write, but I'm not reading 2,000 pages. Not in one.
See?
Not in one. That's a manual.
You've reached your
quota. Will you listen? Will you listen to it?
Yeah, but I'd have to listen to it at least times 2. Come on. You're not expecting me to listen to 30 solid hours, are you? Because it's not happening.
I don't know what you do in your life, Abby.
It's a lot of
you
content.
might be on a train for 30 hours.
I work. I haven't got 30 hours around my job.
You know, everyone complains about content. That's a lot of content right there.
It's a lot of content.
30 hours.
That's why you have the exclusive edition for the dieharders that want it.
Well, that was a tough pill for me to swallow, by the way. I did want to release it all at once, and then I realized I can't even get it done all, when I wanted to, and so I'm like, okay, cut it in half. And then at that point, I'm like, wow, this would have really been a really robust book. And I love that, because then you guys said, hey, no, let's come back and we'll put it all together. It's intended to be a trilogy, but I'm going to break it down into 6 installments.
And it makes sense, because you don't want to leave someone feeling like, you want them to be challenged, but at the same time you don't want them to be like, oh, another one of these books has come out. I'm going to get to that in like 6 months when I've got nothing to do. You want them to immediately pick it up and jump right back in.
Next one right now.
Well, I want that experience that I had growing up when my mom woke up super early to get in a long ass line outside of Barnes and Noble for a Harry Potter book. That's what I want. We don't see that anymore.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we will again, but I'm going to try.
It's kind of like an
I'll pre-order it online. Sorry, I don't have Barnes and Noble here.
Oh, damn it, Abby.
I'll get it posted to my house. I'll be so excited.
You're promoting Amazon again.
Not Amazon. Kindle, different thing.
Oh, okay.
Although it's made by Amazon.
Let's get
Bezos does what he does,
Respect.
but not good for the environment.
let's get practical.
I would just an observation, if I may. Characters are what make stories happen, and so if your characters are compelling, readers will usually give some grace because they enjoy the character, whoever it is.
Right.
You'll get some, as a writer, you'll get some. Oh gosh, what's the word I'm looking for? Latitude from your readers, as long as you're dealing with compelling characters. I read a book just recently called Polo Stand. It was a 300 plus page story, and there was not one likable character in the entire book, not one. And I mean, it was, my son had gotten it to me for Christmas, and I thought, well, I gotta read it. My kid gave me the book; he's gonna want to know what I think.
Yeah.
And I kept waiting for somebody to be a hero, or to stand out, or to do something good, or to be a leader. There wasn't. Not a single character in the whole book was someone I was rooting for, and I've never experienced that before. But it reinforced what I said before. It's rare to be able to get a book published that doesn't have characters that you can either relate to or root for. Going back to the Star Wars thing, there were a lot of people that you could root for and people you could hate in those things, and that was really crystal clear. And I'm okay with, in some cases, I mentioned Flanders by Patricia Anthony. Her character, Travis Lee Stanley, was no saint by any stretch, but he does enough. He's got a big enough heart that you root for him in spite of his flaws. And I think that's what makes great characters too. We don't necessarily want to read about saints in fiction stories. We want to hear about them in church. And we want real people who have got real flaws that they manage to do their thing anyway. And I love writing characters that are flawed, because we all are. You know, it's things that we can relate to.
Authenticity.
Okay.
Mhm.
So
I would also like to debate that I think you can hate an entire cast, and because you hate them so much, you have to read it to the end. 'Cause you're like,
Ugh.
I just need to see your downfall. I just don't like you enough.
Yeah.
But I have to see you crumble.
you know what?
It
That's
just
fair.
wasn't any one of them. It was bizarre.
But that
Polo
touches.
Stand. Give it a look if that's a style that you like, Abby.
But what I'll say to that is it touches on this thing of entertainment. As long as the audience feels some way about it, it's done its job. The worst thing is indifference. You want them to either
Correct.
really hate it or really love it. You don't want them to be on the fence. And then just,
Facts.
you want them to have that impulse.
Infamous
Well, that's
works
it.
too.
Yeah.
Yes. Always.
It's a spectrum, so that's just I'm glad you brought up that point, Abby.
Well, Cat Williams, I think, said it best. Feel free to hate on me. He says, if you have not collected a hater today, you have not done a good job.
Haters bring so much passion and so much fire. Sometimes they're more loyal than your fans, haters. It's crazy business.
It's 100%
Because
true.
you live in their head rent free.
Exactly.
Well, and I think, Carmine, to your point, I recall recently hearing the same thing that you just said. The opposite of love is not hate; it's indifference. And I would say perhaps I used the wrong words when describing the characters in Polo Stand. I didn't hate them; I just didn't care. I didn't care what happened to them. They weren't likable enough to care whether or not they wound up, being drowned in the river or, pulled
Is that
apart by
worse?
horses.
I feel
Oh
it's
yeah,
worse.
I think it's a lot
100%.
worse. Indifference
if
is
someone
the
thinks I'm
worst.
boring,
I feel that's way
stab
worse.
the chest.
You know,
Oh, no question.
you put so
Yeah.
much into these characters, and then the audience just don't care. Like that's
Oh,
that's
God.
got to be a nightmare.
That's like, oh,
Yeah, like hundreds of hours have gone into these characters, revisions.
so I just won't ever write again. Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much for your thoughts and feedback. Time to retire.
Grand opening, grand closing.
There was nothing.
First and
Zero
only.
sales.
But again, it was memorable because you noticed you were indifferent, but you still managed to read through to completion. Obviously, you had other motivations, but I'm sure if you weren't enjoying it to a certain extent, you would have maybe put the book down.
Oh, I would have left it down. Yeah, probably halfway in. Because
Yeah,
by the time I
that
got to
was
halfway in, I would have stopped. but I wanted to carry on because my son wanted me to read the book, and he hadn't read it. And, yeah.
Nice.
He may be pulling my leg here, thinking, he hated it, and I'll pull one over on Dad. Here, read this book, Dad. But yeah.
Okay, so
I think info dump a character can kill the whole behind that character, and I think sadly they're normally portrayed through like a sciencey character or the guy that's the most intelligent out of the lot, that they just info dump, and then you're like, oh, shut up, like Sims losing minus points over your head, like.
Well,
don't care. It can kill the character.
That is a good segue though into this question, and is an info dump ever acceptable? Is there a specific genre or circumstance where you're actually like, oh, thanks for that, I needed that information?
In an engineering design guide.
Textbook.
It's not plot or character driven. It's exactly what it is. It's an instruction manual, and there's room for those, but that I don't know many people who would welcome to go home and pull their engineering design guide off their coffee table and dive right into chapter 16 on bipolarization or electrical conductivity and the difference between ohms and watts. I mean, I don't think so. Not in what I write, at least.
Yeah.
I would tell you, I think the guy who comes closest to that and gets away with it is Tom Clancy. He writes some pretty technical stuff in his, Hunt for Red October and other stories that he's written. But his audience likes that stuff. A lot of them are ex-military. They've lived in those submarines. They've sat in those missile silos. They kind of relate to that. In my opinion, he walks a very close line to going over the edge for the recreational reader. I don't necessarily need to know exactly how many dials there are on a submarine's main console and exactly what all of them say and what all of them do. But he has an audience that appreciates that about him. I mean, I appreciate the fact that he does his research and he knows what he's talking about. I do the same thing. My literary agent says I don't write fiction, I write faction, because I do my studying. But I only use those facts to buttress a certain scene, make sure the reader is still with me, and give my characters an interesting place to interact. And then that exposition is serving a point of giving. Typically, it's done to give a character either a new stage to stand on, or some new footing, or perhaps a new direction to go. And if you were to read one of my books and look up some of the specific details that I reference, you'd see that I know what I'm talking about. I do that research, but I try really hard, and that's why there's a difference between what you as the author need to know about your story versus what you need to write in order to tell the book. Those are two very different things. And I didn't know that at first. I did a lot of exposition because I thought I had to explain everything that was going on to the detail. And it wasn't until I started joining some writers groups and took the class at SMU here in Texas, where I met Patricia, that I realized, no, that's not how fiction writing is done. I'm not writing a manual, I'm writing a story. And the story is what's going to carry you.
To answer your question, Carmine, on my side, I think perfect examples would be any type of short stories, chronicles of short stories, because you get, call it 2 to 3 chapters worth of a short, and people are satisfied with that. And I don't think you can accomplish that type of feat if you don't use exposition to really cement what's happening, because you're going to flip to a whole new story right after that. And that's what some people like to do. They're like, all right, I want to move on. And every time, and sometimes I could just jump straight 7 chapters in or whatever, because I really like the middle part. It's kind of like, I'll put it to you like a Bible, you know what I mean? You can go straight to that part in the Bible that you like. Situation.
Hey, Michael, to that point, you read The House on Cumberwells Lane, right?
I have not.
Oh, you didn't? I thought you read that to your wife. That's the one.
Yes. Sorry, you're short. Yes, about the what did? Yes.
What did
really
say
embarrassing
Mello?
Yes.
So it's
yes, I did.
Yeah. Does that fit what you're describing though? I mean, it's a short story.
Yes.
It was you're in and you're out.
And
I think it was.
And what I liked about that is that you can pull it that way because it's what you did was, and I don't know what it's called, but is it an innuendo?
No, it's an unreliable narrator.
Okay. Could you explain what that is?
Love that concept.
So an unreliable narrator is a point of view character who is not either able to or is not willing to give you the full story, and so you go through this whole thing. I'll share with you very briefly. So, The House on Cumberwealth Lane is a story set in Victorian England, and the reason I wrote it was because in one of the writers groups that I was in, there was a Texas woman in her 40s who wrote Victorian romances, and she spoke like a Texan all the time, except when she was reading. And when she would read in a Victorian British accent. And I always thought that was about the goofiest thing I'd ever heard anybody do. But that was her thing. And so when in our writers groups, we would bring 8 to 10 pages, we would read to each other, and then we would be quiet and let everybody else critique us. So in this group, there were probably 12 or 15 of us on a regular basis weekly. She was always one of them. And I took great pride in giving a lot of detail, like I did with Michael when I first started with his work, and really diving in deep and giving insights and thoughts and so on. And this romance writer finally pulled me aside after 3 or 4 weeks and said, why don't you give me the same degree of criticisms that you give everybody else? And I said, well, I really don't know your genre. And quite frankly, I really don't think I would be able to help you much because I don't get the romance genre. And essentially she said, well, what don't you like about it? I said, well, it strikes me it's about the most base type of writing there is, because it's kind of the same story over and over again. It's just different characters, it's different settings, it's different eras. And she said, oh, do you think it's easy? And I said, well, yeah, compared to other works of literature, I think romance is a pretty easy one. And she got mad at me. And she said, well, if you think it's so easy, why don't you write one? So I did. I wrote this 12-page short story. And it's narrated by a woman named, or a character named, oh gosh, you just said it. Oh, I'm having a brain cramp. Michael, do you remember her name? Sadie. What would Sadie bellow?
Sadie.
So I wrote this whole 12 pages, and right up at the very end, and I said, and Sadie bellowed, and then I left it blank. And I said, what did Sadie bellow? And the whole thing was very romantic. It was about this young character, Sadie, who essentially lives in a barn in old England out in the countryside. And men come to the barn and they pay the madam money, and then they go in with Chloe or with, all the other ladies at Cumberwealth Lane that live there. And Sadie romances about being with the madam of the house, her oldest son. When they were young, they would play together in the prairies, and he would pick her berries and just like kids. And you get right up to the end, and they're it feels really, really romantic. And I would get right to the end. What did Sadie bellow? And the comments that I got back from most of the ladies were pretty hysterical, because they were all quite sure these two were about to consummate their relationship. And the answer was no, Sadie mooed, because Sadie was actually a dairy cow, who was a young cow who had not been milked yet. And so there was full of innuendo and all these things. That's an unreliable narrator. Oh. And when I told them, no, Sadie said moo. My romance writer got really pissed off at me.
100%. I'm annoyed at you. I haven't even read it.
That's a good demonstration.
It's pretty funny, and it's got a lot of innuendo in there. There's a lot of, once you know, it's really easy to spot that these are just cows in a barn. But the way that it's written was intended to fool the writer or the reader, and that's what an unreliable narrator is.
So my example of that, Kanye West, but he also 2 examples, Kanye West and Common. I think Common did this interpretation first
in hip hop,
and these are in hip hop. Yep. So Common, he did.
Her, was it her?
I used to love her.
Yeah, that was it.
Yeah, Common. I used to love her. And that one came out in 1994, and he is describing his love for, he's describing his love of, it sounds like a woman, and you're engaged. This man is confessing his love to this woman, and he's also, revealing how this woman cheated on him with so many different people, and you're like, oh my gosh, what are you telling me, man? It's like, why are you putting this in rap form? And at the end of it, he says, and what I'm talking about, y'all, is hip hop. And you're like, oh, yep, that makes a lot of sense.
It's that,
you know what I mean? Yeah. And then Kanye West, he did, oh my gosh, Homecoming. No, not Homecoming, not Homecoming. He did
Homecoming
do Homecoming.
Is June, though.
Hold on. I gotta bear with me. I have to pull it up. No.
Do you know which album it was on?
Yeah, it's Graduation. There you go. That's the quickest way I could do it. No, God, no.
I mean, great song.
Yeah, great song.
Great song.
Yeah.
Graduation album is fantastic. By the way, gang.
Hold on. I got it up right here.
You need me to just shout you track by track?
I was thinking, just go through the track list.
Like it up on my spot.
It might be Homecoming.
Oh,
yeah. And so, but basically, he did the same thing in a different way, in that he was talking about this. I can't recall exactly if he was talking about hip hop and then he translated it to the city of Chicago, or he said the city of Chicago and he was talking about hip hop, same thing. But those two, they spoke to me, and I'm still trying to figure out how I can interpret something like that, an unreliable narrator, into a work of my own creation. But it's on my bucket list, to-do list, to create my own, I guess, short narrative and put that out there. That is that phenomenal. So thank you for that, for reminding me of what that's called.
Okay.
Well, to respond to the question, sorry, to be really annoying, I have technically 4 answers.
Okay.
Infodumps are acceptable in complicated magic systems in fantasy genre. Sci-fi, if you're exploring a sci-fi universe, I think infodumps are totally acceptable. I think recap style prologues, although we're a bit of prologue haters over here, I think recap style prologues are if you're in a 12-book series, damn right, give me a recap, because I don't think I read them in order. And true crime. I read a lot of true crime, so I think when describing cases and things like that, especially when you're going fresh in, if you don't know a lot about a serial killer or somebody who's done a lot of bad things, I think infodumps, to give context before you go into it, is completely valid.
Wow.
Like Law and Order, every single episode. If those didn't happen, what's the point? What are they solving? Don't know. Yeah. New York Undercover, same thing.
It's been on a long time as well, so the formula must be working to some extent.
Well, people like that. Every generation, they'll fall asleep to some heinous crime.
I'm not a true crime guy. We'll have to give Abby an episode to explain the true crime thing, because it is a phenomenon.
It's true events. True events, man, and I think it gives society methods of how to prevent those true events. And so I actually encourage, at the right age, to watch a season of something like that, just so you think differently when you go outside. That's my statement.
There's a danger of becoming a copycat killer. You might see their mistakes.
If you want to watch a crime documentary on Netflix, Don't Fuck with Cat is incredible.
Oh,
yeah,
so good. If you've not watched it, it's true crime. It's the power of social media in a good way. It's so good. It's so basic. It is an info dumpy, obviously, because you need the context, but it's quick, easy. You get it straight away. If you're new to that sort of genre and you're not particularly sensitive, obviously true crime is a sensitive genre, but it is very good. That's always my recommend.
Okay, so from a reader's perspective, what is the difference between boring info dump exposition and world building? What can the audience take away from that? How would you define those as separate things?
The level of detail, in my opinion. You can have excess detail and then it becomes something else. You can have too little detail and that's something else. That's a miss.
Yeah.
The right level of detail, I think, differentiates what you're trying to do.
No, that's fair, because as Abby said, like in a magic system, when they're explaining it, you're not seeing it as exposition. And I'll agree with you there. It is necessary with some of the complex systems. But
especially when you're going into like a universe that you have never explored before, obviously it's important to have the information. You can't just brush over it. Like, I agree getting into the action is important, but when people are shooting all sorts of things out of all sorts of places, like out their eyeballs, out their wrists, elbows, where's the biology in that? Like, I need to understand how you're physically able to do that. Like, it's like Spider-Man. Everyone knows he shoots webs, but in the latest Spider-Man film, I can't even think what it's called now, is that they briefly go over how they shoot webs in different ways, in different generations, in different films. Yeah. And it's literally a brief scene. But for people that are like, what? Why does he make it? Why does he shoot it out of his hands? Like, that's literally a 5-minute summary. But it was important for people who are Spider-Man fans. Like, things like that are necessary, I think.
And Easter eggs.
Yeah.
And from that, you're planning on your reader to go back to that original piece earlier, because they were like, whoa, you said this. It was here.
Yeah.
But there are moments, and I'm rewriting these moments in my own writing work, and I'm like, this is an exposition stuff. But I'm like, it's so necessary, and I only did 2 sentences. It's done. I'm moving on.
You got to have a limit. You got to know where to cut that off.
I cut it off, but I was like, it needs to, because it's an Easter egg, and people are going to reread this and be like, those 2 sentences were such a great hint.
Yeah.
I'm so glad he did that. That's what I'm hoping for, at least.
But my question then would be, could those 2 sentences be condensed to 1? That's what
Don't do me like that. I'm not going backwards right now. I'll come back and answer that question.
I'm just trying to answer the question. How much detail is too much detail? I think you said it right, Michael. It is a balance. And I do think, Abby, I agree with you as well. A lot of it depends on genre. Like I said, Tom Clancy can get away with a lot of stuff that other authors wouldn't be able to get away with. And his audience is going to forgive him for that because they like that. That's a part of his writing of novels that they really appreciate and enjoy. It just has to be balanced. My advice is say just enough, and then stop, and then again carry forward with the action. That's how I write. But that's the genre that I write in. I'm a mainstream mystery thriller, murder mystery guy, and so that's where I land.
So where would you say that line is? Like, you're working on something, and where do you cut that off? Where do you kind of say, oh, that is enough? Like, if it's a 2-sentence kind of thing, how do you look at that in your own work?
For me, I'll seek outside counsel. I'll read. I'll have a writers group that I will read passages to, and they'll tell me I don't need to know all of that. You've got a page and a half here of this happened, and this is what this does, and this is how it works, and this is who designed it, and this is when they got the patent and all that stuff. No. It just take that page and a half, and that becomes 1 paragraph, or maybe 2. But they're brief, concise, precision. Don't let in my work. I don't want to let exposition get in the way of action and of progressing the story and just continuously moving it forward, because that will compel the reader to want. I was only going to read through this chapter, but I got to know what happens next, and they flip to the next chapter, and off they go. That's the sort of genre that I write in. And just for a personal aside, and we're just about out of time, on my 9th book, and Michael, I do have a contract from a publisher that's now on my home computer for that one, so I think that one's going to finally go.
Congrats.
I had, in this story, I have 70 pages where my protagonist character is all by himself on the northernmost coast of Greenland, following the steps of a vision quest of a young man, an Inuit shaman in the mid-1940s. And when I told my agent, I said, and his name is Bronx Roussel, my character, when Bronx, he goes away for 70 pages all by himself on a 5-day quest up the northernmost coast of Greenland and back. She said, Randy, how are you going to make that interesting? She said, why don't you just write And then 5 days later, and I said, no, I feel like this is needed for this character development and for what he needs to feel and experience and how he's going to grow. And after my agent read it, she said, those are 70 of the most brilliant pages of work you've ever done. And I thought, well, there you go. So, now that's not exposition. I was moving his character forward, but he had nobody to talk to except the Kawasaki that he was riding and a Greenland wolf who he wound up befriending along the way. So, but it worked. And so I think there's room for it, but you got to be careful. And in that case, I think I walked the line, but I think I did it successfully.